All right, before we commence with testimony, I'll just inquire of the witness. Have you reviewed or been viewing any part of the trial or the testimony of any other witnesses while this case has been going?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll also note if you'd please make sure to answer all questions verbally with a yes or no response, and then try to not talk at the same time as anyone that's questioning you so the record stays clear. And with that in mind, Ms. Blake, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cowden, where are you currently employed?
I work for the Chandler Fire Department in Chandler, Arizona.
And I guess for the record, we'll have you state your full name. I forgot to do that.
Okay, yes, my name is Scott Cowden.
How long have you been employed with the fire department?
Almost 24 years.
And what is your specific title or role in association with the fire department?
I'm a fire engineer, which means you drive the apparatus, still a firefighter, and then also a paramedic.
And do you have training in order to be a paramedic?
Yes, I started out as an EMT, and I went to paramedic school and graduated in 2007.
Do you also teach courses on CPR?
I used to be a CPR instructor for about 12 years, teaching those courses, yes.
Were you working with the fire department on July 11th of 2019?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall being dispatched out to the report of a shooting victim?
Yes.
And Your Honor, I'm going to object just to make sure on the record that our 404B objection is still noted. My client's not under trial here for anything that happened in Arizona, so we object for relevance.
All right, I've considered that objection. The court's previously taken that issue up on a ruling that was made in February. For the reasons I incorporated into that ruling, and for under 404B, the court does determine that this evidence can be presented with an appropriate limiting instruction. So, Ms. Blake, that limiting instruction has already been provided to the jury and will be provided again at the time of deliberations. For that reason, the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you respond out, or I guess let me back up. When you responded out on July 11th, where initially did you respond to?
We responded to a residential house for a gunshot wound or gunshot victim.
Did you enter the residence when you initially responded?
Yes.
And when you entered the residence, did you locate the individual that had been shot?
Yes.
What did you observe regarding that individual?
We were led into the house by a Chandler police officer. They were on scene before us, and when you went into that front door, that entry room is where we found Charles laying on the ground on the floor on his back, and he appeared to be unconscious as you approached him.
And when you say Charles, did you learn his last name?
Charles Vallow, we did learn. My captain on the crew was documenting the call. He would have been communicating with the Chandler officers who were communicating with other individuals on the scene that would be able to supply that information.
And you eventually learned his identity as well?
Yes.
And you said he appeared to be unconscious. Did you get closer to Mr. Vallow?
Yes, I would have been the first one to actually make it to Charles. So then you're going to go through that process of kind of doing your assessment and evaluation of him.
And when you were doing the assessment and evaluation, did you notice any injuries on his person?
Yes, there was some blood on his shirt. I had to lift up his shirt so I could find the proper landmarks to be able to perform CPR while checking for his level of responsiveness, breathing, things like that. And he had 2 gunshot wounds.
And had you seen gunshot wounds before?
Yes.
And those were consistent with other gunshot wounds that you'd seen?
Yes.
And when you say that you pulled up a shirt or removed the shirt to perform CPR, did you in fact perform CPR on Mr. Vallow?
Yes, I did.
Did you make any observations as you were performing CPR?
Yes. So based on my experience, both as a first responder, firefighter, and a paramedic, and also a CPR instructor, you have certain landmarks that you're looking for, and we were led to believe that CPR had been started prior to our arrival, communicating with dispatch en route to the scene, monitoring that radio channel. We were led to believe that the caller, the shooter, had started CPR. And so when that happens, if the person is doing CPR and they're doing it effectively in the right place, it's quite common to where you can sustain injuries to the chest. You have to be forceful enough that you're actually going to compress the heart to be able to pump the blood to the body, trying to keep them alive and buy some time for help to arrive. And so typically when that happens, an impression would be left in the area of their sternum, the lower part of their chest, where the hands would have been doing the compressions. And then I didn't see that initially. I started my compressions and I felt what I would describe as like a crunch or a crack. Again, when you're doing it forcefully enough to be effective, you can have injuries occur to the sternum or a broken rib. They could displace from the sternum where they're connected on that chest wall. And so you can feel that occur typically in that first compression or first couple compressions. And I did feel that.
And in your training and experience, if someone had been performing CPR, would you have expected to feel that crack or that crunch?
I would not have expected to experience that and feel that had they been doing CPR and doing it effectively. And
would you have expected to see some kind of an impression had someone been performing CPR?
Yes, and then in fact, when it became appropriate time for me to stop doing CPR, because my colleagues were further exposing Charles, putting a heart monitor on him so we could see if he had any activity with his heart. So I had to stop compression so we could look at that, and I could see the impression that I created and made now.
Have you performed CPR before on individuals that have some kind of an injury to their body that could result in bleeding?
Yes.
And when you were done performing CPR, did you have blood located on your hands or your gloves?
Yes.
Would you have expected to see that if someone had been performing CPR before you arrived on their hands?
Yes.
If I may have just one moment.
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Cross-examination?
Your Honor, since we've previously objected to the entirety of this testimony, we don't have any questions.
All right, that'll conclude the testimony of this witness then. Thank you for appearing and testifying today. Is there any objection to this witness being excused?
No, Your Honor, and we would ask that he be excused at this time.